This morning, for the latest installment of our video conversations, we have Brandon Martinez from the Wyoming, Colorado region, another former international officer candidate, and he's been generous enough to join us this morning to talk about the officer campaign experience more so, and talk about our ideas on alumni. So, Brandon, thank you very much for joining us. Just please, for our audience, just give a brief intro of yourself in terms of college, chapter, and anything else that would be interesting to the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on. And yeah, so again, my name is Brandon Martinez. I'm from Highlands Ranch, Colorado. I go to Arapahoe Community College, which is in Littleton, Colorado. And I'm part of the Sigma Phi chapter, and I've been the vice president of college project for 2 semesters now, going into my 3rd semester coming up in the fall semester. And my majors are philosophy and psychology, although if I could add a 3rd one, it would be physics. And some interesting things about me, if I had more time, I would probably try and get back into doing Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as doing open mics for stand-up. So that's just a little bit about me in a minute.
So we'll get started and delve into the just sort of the beginning, as we've done with most people, in terms of when you, let's take it back to when you were in the early stages of your career at Arapahoe and you got your invitation to Phi Theta Kappa. Sort of what made the membership worth it to you? What made you decide it was a worthwhile endeavor to join? And then what made it sort of a building of momentum as your early days of involvement became greater and greater to the point where you became a super duper involved member as you have?
Well, so when I got my invitation to be a member, I was actually waiting for it, because when I first actually applied to ACC 2 years before I actually attended orientation. However, I took 2 years to actually attend orientation because I was very self-conscious. I had social anxiety. I didn't really have a lot of confidence in myself. I had no confidence in myself actually when I first applied. When I did finally apply, I did have enough confidence to actually apply and attend orientation, since a lot of my friends at that time were really encouraging me to fulfill my potential and do more than just what I was doing at the time. And all throughout orientation, I was just totally terrified. At that point, I was still nervous just to go outside, because it was just hard just to be seen by people. That's how bad my social anxiety was. And almost throughout the entire tour of the school, I was thinking this is a mistake. I shouldn't be doing this, sure, I'm doing good at my restaurant job right now, but I don't think I can succeed in academics, because I didn't do terrible in high school, but I didn't do too well either. I think I graduated with a 2.7 GPA. And I thought, I can't, succeed in a college standpoint, because it's not that I slacked off in high school. I did try pretty hard, but I still didn't do that well. And all throughout until pretty much the very end, I had this bad mindset. But the presenter gave a little blurb about PTK, and the only thing I really remember him saying was about how there were scholarship opportunities and it was very prestigious. I don't really remember anything too much besides that, but it was enough for me to just get tunnel vision and say, hey, I might not have any confidence really within myself, but I just got tunnel vision for becoming a member. So there were days where I would be at school from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because my first class of public speaking started all the way at 8 a.m. It was actually the first class that opened up at school, and the library would close at 8 p.m. And as I said, I wasn't a very good student, even though I did try. So I basically lived in the library that full first semester, and I really dedicated myself. It was kind of to my advantage that I didn't really socialize that much, because I was just always at school and then always at work. But I managed to go from a 2.7 GPA to a 3.77 GPA. And when I got the invitation, that letter was proof that I wasn't this incapable person I thought I was for so long, that I was really capable of more than I originally thought. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do this because I worked. I never worked so hard for anything at that point. I'm going to do this. I really have no idea what any of this organization is, but like this is what got me through the semester.
So the invitation letter was of such significance in and of itself. It was almost like it was hung up on the wall for several years, you know, in its own right, as it was in my household, not my choice.
Yeah.
So when you started to get involved with the chapter's activities, was there a particular moment or particular project that you were working on, particular opportunity that you were participating in, that made you take a step aside for a second and say, and make a realization to yourself, this is really resonating with me, I'm really enjoying this, this I can tell is going to be a defining characteristic of my education, it's going to be with me throughout my entire educational journey?
There's been a few significant moments. The first one was actually my first meeting because, again, even though I had made improvements socially in my first semester, I was still pretty socially anxious. And, you know, as I was learning, because I got in contact with my advisor or one of the advisors before I accepted my invitation, just to get a little more information about it. And he went into more detail about how it's this prestigious honor society, there's all these projects we do. And I was getting a little nervous and timid about it because I thought, oh, this is like this prestigious organization, you know, I might be doing really well, but I don't know if I have the skills to really be able to succeed at like super high level, like outside of just, you know, like reading a textbook and then doing well on a test. And also I wasn't sure exactly what the people would be like in PTK, but when I went to that first meeting, they were all just like regular college students. And, you know, I just thought like, hey, these people, they're kind of like me. And I never really had like a whole group of people where like, hey, I'm almost like on the same wavelength as these people and I don't even really know any of them. So that was the first moment where I was like, hey, you know, it was a lot of effort just to like go to this meeting. I'm going to make sure I keep on going. And then when I started to like get more involved, it was when I started to learn more about the college project. And in that semester, it was just the planning stages. And I started to work a little closely with the current VP of the college project because I wanted to become the VP of the college project, but I didn't want to like overthrow him in a sense. So I just was talking to him like, hey, you know, what have you been doing? Like, what did you do last semester and this semester to be successful? Then I attended the meeting he had with administration when he submitted his proposals. And it was throughout this process of learning about how, hey, the college project is supposed to better the relationship between administration and the student body, particularly PTK, but also to benefit the local community as well as the student body. And something that I've always like enjoyed doing is creating things. And particularly I got this from high school when I started doing ceramics because I've always been terrible at drawing, but I've always been pretty good with clay because you can just take this like ugly lump of gray clay, but if you put enough time and effort into it, even though I wasn't really that good at ceramics, I always had to also spend like all day just to like, you know, do some, my end product was always good, but I spent like probably double or triple the amount of hours that other students had to. But I could turn something that was practically like nothing into something that was like really beautiful. And I wanted to do something similar to that. And I felt like the VP of the college project position was something that I could do that with in another aspect of my life. So that was when working with the VP of the college project and then learning about it through all the meetings there wasn't really like a particular moment, but through those meetings I had with him, that was when I was like, hey, I want to do this, even though I'm not 100% sure where this is going to lead. Like, I want to do this because I want to create something.
So before we delve into the international type stuff, just taking a step back at looking at your experience at your community college, everybody always believes that their institution is unique in terms of providing an opportunity that's conducive for students to achieve, particularly through Phi Theta Kappa. What do you think sets your community college apart in terms of, you know, providing an atmosphere that promotes the type of activity that you and your peers have undertaken?
Well, I believe something unique that ACC does is that we have a lot of free resources for all students, because ACC has a close relationship to PTK, and PTK does have a lot of unique resources, scholarships, and also the EDGE programs. But ACC realizes that not every student is going to become a member of PTK, so they have an excellent career and transfer center that does their best to work in depth with every student. They have a really good student access services center that help kids with disabilities, and I personally have epilepsy, and I still have to face the side effects of my medication, so they really help meet all the accommodations that I may need with that, and they really try and serve the students at the best they can. And something that I really like that they do is they have this pilot program called the Engaged Scholars Program. And the idea of it is that they provide undergraduate tools to students so that they can pursue undergraduate research. And right now I'm working with a faculty psychology member, and I'm actually planning on publishing a research paper we've been working on the last year in an undergraduate journal. And, typically that's something that undergraduate students, so that they can put that on a resume to get into graduate school. But I might get that, and then I have another idea for another research paper, and I'm going to get 2 research papers published before I even get my associate's degree. And that's something that we're going to try and get available to more students, and that's something I think is really amazing, and I don't know if any other college does something like that. So that's also been a really big experience for me, because I kind of suck at research. So for me to have to do something at an undergraduate level, and we're already at the associate's level, I struggle. It was a very big learning curve, but it has definitely been worth it.
That goes a long way in summing up the faculty, and that's very impressive that those opportunities are out there. I realized before I tossed it over to Katie, I didn't say or ask previously the position that you were running for. Were you running? No, you ran for international president, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. With that, I'll toss it over to Katie now.
Yeah. Excuse me. So earlier you mentioned, having, that social anxiety, but what what sparked that to run for international office for you?
Well, around the same time when it was probably about a month or so after I had become interested in becoming the VP of the college project in the following semester. It was actually a couple weeks before the Hallmark retreat we have at the end of the semester. One of our advisors told us about how, while there is the local positions, and then there's also the regional officer positions, there's also this thing called international office. And I was like, oh, what's this thing? And I never even really thought about running for a regional office, just because I was so focused on my studies, because again, I really had to put in that extra bit of effort. I couldn't just coast by and just write a paper in a night. I really had to put in the work to do it. And from what I asked more information about it, and she told me about a chapter officer a couple of years ago who ran for a vice president of Division 4, which is our division. And she got, I think, a full ride scholarship for her bachelor's and master's degree, and how there's a lot of just self-improvement that she went through in that time. And all throughout my time at ACC, but also a few months prior to that, I kept on really trying to focus on continuing to improve myself in all aspects of my life, because for a long time, as I said, I had really, really, really bad social anxiety and depressive thoughts, and I just really didn't have a good mindset. I wanted to make sure that I didn't just stop at doing well at ACC. I wanted to make sure I was a member of PTK. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just a member of PTK. I wanted to be the VP of college project. And then I was like, I'm not going to stop here. I want to run for international ops as well. When I thought about that, I was before deciding to run officially, even though it was a year before you could officially decide to run, I thought to myself, I don't want to run just because it's a good opportunity. I want to run because I have something to share with other people. Because I got in contact with Tasha, who was the was a past VP of Division 4, and she told me, why she was running, why other people run, and to make sure that you don't run just to run. So I did a little bit of self-reflection. I thought like, hey, I have come like a long way. Like I'm a totally different person like from just 6 months ago. And I feel that like if I share my story, I'm not too particularly unique in terms of what I do in terms of self-improvement. I think that anybody can do what I do in terms of making the turnaround that the turnaround in terms of like accepting the adversity they've overcome, accepting maybe like since I had epilepsy and was bullied, accepting a diagnosis that may limit them in some capacity, but instead of looking at it as like, hey, this limits me from doing X, Y, and Z, you looking at it as like, hey, this is something that I've overcome, and this is only going to propel me to do more than like anybody than I could ever even imagine, as long as I use it as a sharpening point. So I wanted to authentically share my story with others and hopefully inspire them. And I didn't really think that at the time. That's more of kind of something that evolved from April of last year to the February of this year. But that was the initial thought was I want to run so that I can continue to better myself. I want to continue to be a part of this organization, but I also want to share my story because I feel like I have something to say. But then it got more and more refined as time went on.
So on that note, what was your campaign platform?
In terms of social media and how I was reaching people, or
just in general, what were those points that you wanted to share with people that you wanted to basically vote for you?
Oh, well, so I really shared like my story about how I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was really young, and I was bullied around the same time, and this caused me to become very withdrawn. I became very socially anxious, and I eventually became depressed. And all this really led me to put up barriers, and I really didn't have any friends, and I didn't really trust anybody. And because of this, for all the way up until I was almost 21, I would say, and I'm only going to be 22 in June, my thoughts when like connecting with other people were more of like, do I trust this person enough to tell them all the bad things that have happened to me? But now through being a part of PTK and even particularly running for international office, it's more of me looking forward to all the positive memories I'll make with people and how I'll be able to share them with everyone. And I wanted to really put an emphasis on how people do as themselves a disservice when they believe that they are less than others for whatever reason, whether it's for a diagnosis they may have or past adversity, because I used to be really body conscious. I was actually bulimic at one point, and I really wanted to just share like all this adversity that I went through and say like, hey, all these past aspects aspects of myself currently, they may not be glamorous, and in fact they're like not glamorous at all, but they're what make me me, and everything that I've been through has led to me doing what I'm doing now. You should totally just accept who you are, and then rather than putting up walls around you and not trusting others, when you take that leap of faith, it can lead you to connections in places that you never believed that you would be able to experience before. And I wanted to stress the importance of connections with others and how pain is relative and pain is a universal thing that we all experience. And one of the reasons why I did put up barriers was because I thought no one experienced like what I experienced. And because of that, I would never be able to have really good friends or just have like a really deep connection with other people. But I wanted to let people know like, hey, that's not the case. Just because someone may not have the exact same pain that you have doesn't mean that you can't be friends with them, that you can't be like-minded like them. Because a lot of people in PTK, and particularly the other international candidates, they haven't been through the same stuff that I've been through, but they've also had past hardships, and all these past hardships they've overcome led them to their own genuine authentic goals that they wanted to achieve through international office and their career. And, I've just connected with them on a wavelength like never before, just in the Zoom meetings that we've been having. So I wanted to share, I'd say in a sentence, like the importance of connections with others.
So mindful of the format change of the convention and the timing change of the convention, what was a typical day like for you campaigning? And everybody's experience is different, so it's always interesting to hear that difference of approach to the candidacy.
It kind of changed throughout because I worked full time before this, and I lost both my jobs when COVID hit, and that was like in Colorado, and that was the day before the campaign officially started, actually. So that was really stressful because I was like filing for unemployment. I was trying to find another job as well, and all throughout I was like I was hired, but then I was like let go of the place because I was like, oh, we're still doing well even though COVID's happening. They're like, hey, COVID's actually hit us hard, and they'd like let me go. So I'd be like working, and then when I got home, I'd be trying to work on my social media campaign, but then I get calls saying, hey, sorry, but we have to let you go. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was very stressful in terms of that at sometimes, but in it also, the first day of my social media campaign went a little like this. I was on Facebook probably about 6 or 8 hours, and I was just like looking at what the other candidates were doing. I'm like, I have no idea what to do. I was on like Instagram all day. I was like friending and following people. And then finally, after about 8 hours of doing that, I made like a short, like maybe 1-minute video. It was like in the dark, and lighting was terrible. Couldn't really hear what I was saying. I finally got it up. And then the second day was kind of the same thing. By that point, I was already almost like burned out. Thankfully, after that, I kind of got into a routine of like making a plan for the week and saying, okay, so I'm going to make a Facebook post these days talking about whatever I'm going to talk about. Maybe it's going to be about something that I overcame. Maybe it's going to be about, me being the vice president of the college project, and just have a specific theme for like every post or video. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't post too much because I didn't want to become redundant. And part of that I felt that I was a little bit at a disadvantage of is like, I don't really like taking pictures for whatever reasons. And because of that, I didn't really have a lot of pictures of all things I do with PTK. So I couldn't really like share a lot with others. So I only had like really like 2 pictures I could share with people. So I didn't want to keep on showing like the same like 2 pictures. And I was like texting the photography club at AC, like, hey, do you have those pictures from the induction ceremony? Like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, we'll try and find them. Like, school's closed, but we'll try and get them. But the average day was really just I was working, trying to keep up with school, and then trying to maintain my sanity with social media campaign, because I still remember, it was very funny when, it was actually on April Fool's Day when PTK headquarters told us that they were going to extend the campaign time from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And everybody's like, all right, this is an April Fool's joke. Like, whatever. I don't know why you had to do a Zoom call for this. But then Dr. Blake was like, by the way, y'all, this is not April Fool's joke. And then when that happened, like half the screens went black and the other half the cams were just like this. So that was kind of like lighthearted and kind of lifted the mood a little bit. But at the same time, I was like, after 2 days, I thought I was going to burn out. But a big part of really getting me through this was like getting to know the other candidates, because we were the only ones who knew like what we were like going through. So it was really just trying to not be redundant on my social media campaign, and also not posting too much, because it took like so much energy out of me, because I was like learning so much.
By the way, if you're wondering why during that narrative you didn't hear me laughing, it's because I mute myself when the other people talk. But you could tell by my reaction that was pretty priceless. I can only envision half the screens going to black like that. All right, now Katie, I believe you had something next.
Yeah, I was just curious. So it sounds like you did the work kind of by yourself. You didn't necessarily have a campaign manager or somebody else working with you to get your campaign up and running.
Yeah, so I had a campaign manager, and I did have in my chapter, I'll try to participate to be my like campaign team. And they were really involved initially when Catalyst was going to be in Texas, there's only a couple people who attended regularly to the meetings that we were having when trying to prepare for Catalyst. Like, okay, so what are we going to do for our booth? What is going to be my elevator speech? What are we going to want to like say in like a minute to like advertise me essentially? But then once COVID-19 hit, they still like supported me, but at that time it was kind of hard for them to, or it was hard for me to really tell them like what they could do to help me, because it was, from my perspective, it was kind of like a one-man job at that point, besides like, hey guys, I just made a post, please share it. But besides that, I mean, my campaign manager, he's very social media savvy, and he's also very good with like graphic design and designing things. But I couldn't really see any way to utilize the skills, because all of what I was doing was fairly simple and things that I could do on my own. And although it was a lot to take on, I feel like if I did really try and bring him on board, it would have kind of lost that authenticity that I was having in my my messages through my videos and posts. So I did still have my support of my chapter. It's just that they couldn't really do more to support me besides sharing my posts.
Mhm. Do you think maybe you'd have had a different outcome had you had that team, had, COVID-19 not struck and you've had your entire team in that communication?
You mean if Catalyst had been in Texas?
Correct.
Well, I think it's a possibility, because a big fear that we all had with the Catalyst being online is that, hey, is this going to become a like popularity contest? Because some of us, we're not on social media at all. Some of us have been, but some of the candidates have been on social media for years, or they've been really involved in, like not just in PTK for a long time, but they've really been active on like a PTK members page to really share a lot and really like doing that. But a lot of other candidates, have not done that. But that doesn't like take away from all they've done from PTK and how well spoken they are and how authentic they are. And there would have kind of evened the playing field out if we could have like talked to people in person, and that authenticity from all of us would have like gotten across. And I feel that if Catalyst had been in person, the outcomes may not have necessarily been different, but I feel that it would have been better, because everybody could have gotten the recognition that they deserve. Because I still feel that our speeches should have been shown, because as far as I'm concerned, a 90-second speech, doesn't exist. And we kind of really like pioneered that, and we all did like a really good job at creating that. And you're also just never really know who's going to be watching Catalyst. And some people, like, say, might have been watching our speech had Catalyst been live and said like, hey, that speech was like really good, and depending on what the topic was, it could have led to some networking opportunity. But also just, I feel that some recognition could have gotten, we all would have gotten more recognition had Catalyst been in person. And then also, I feel that's a possibility that the outcome may have been different, just because the interpersonal connection and the strange aspect of, did this become a popularity contest in the end, since it was over social media? That's still kind of strange.
So,
Well, and the reason they asked, sorry, Paul, the reason I asked is just because, everybody has everyone has a different opinion or a different take on how, they think the results went, or how that transition from, working on doing things to be in person went from there to the online version, and everybody has a different story about how things, change and transition. So it's really interesting to hear your side of the, your side of the events.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I agree, and I think it's worth mentioning also that if there had been an entire year of everyone knowing that Catalyst was virtual, everyone would have gone about the timing and the process a little bit differently. The point is that it was a disruptive emergency that caused everybody to have how do I want to put this, to have a mandate a change in approach for everybody, is what I was trying what I was trying to get around to. So it was the unexpected nature of it. PTK had to make lemonade out of lemons, basically, with the situation, and it was salvaged in many ways. And a lot of people were happy with the convenience of the actual experience, just taking the whole convention into account, from what I've been told. So they did a pretty good job. But in a situation like that, nothing can. You just can't make anything work perfectly like that. And,
Yeah.
and I think, having heard what you said, I agree with you. I think that part of the campaign experience was a casualty of it, and there was really nothing that could have been done to avoid it. So it was just a new experience that, I think maybe in the future, with people being aware of the existence of such contingencies, now that there's a precedent of the convention being moved online, that in the future people might have that advance notice and awareness of, hey, this might have to go this way, and I might be deprived of that personal interaction experience part of the convention. And what you guys had as a disadvantage was you guys had no way of knowing, no notice, very little timing before the transition took place. That kind of took care of the question that I was going to ask, Katie, in terms of, I was going to say, did the conversion make the campaign experience difficult or simpler? And I think it did make it more difficult. That's generally been the consensus I've gotten from the candidates, is that it was an additional challenge. I did want to go through, though, in terms of how you operated your campaign, and you had pretty much the front and center role in running your own campaign. We've pretty much established that. But what amongst the tasks that you completed for your campaign on a day-to-day basis would you say were experiences or skills that you learned or honed during that process that would come to the greatest use for you in the future for completing your education and pursuing a career?
Well, something I actually looked into is there are times of the day that are best to post on Facebook and Instagram. So now I know that if I ever do something social media focused in the future, whether it is another social media campaign, or for whatever reason I may need to get traction on social media, I know that there are certain days and certain times in each day that it is best to post on Instagram, Facebook, and otherwise. So that's a very useful thing to know, because as far as I'm concerned, most people don't know that, or at least most people who are lay in social media don't know that. And also I would say that really planning, and I'd say even self-care, because I really had to plan out in weeks in advance of what each post's theme was going to be. And also I had to really be cognizant of hey, how am I doing overall? Because at one point, although, as I said before, in the first 2 days, I felt like I was going to burn out. At one point, I really was about to burn out. I had to take off almost a week from everything. So I really had to make sure that I was looking to see what were the best times of the day to post, had to make sure that I was going to be specific on a theme, and then I wanted to make sure that I didn't make too long of a post or too long of a video, because I wanted to make it in depth to where people got a sense of who I was, but I didn't want it to be a long, even though 5 minutes isn't that long, I wanted to be a digestible video or a digestible post that people could read or watch in 2 to 3 minutes. So it was a lot of how can I say a message that other people could say in maybe 6 minutes, but can compress it down and get the same message across, but only in 3 minutes. And I feel like a big part of that came actually from writing the honor speech, because when I first wrote it, it was about a good 3, maybe almost even 4-minute speech, but then I had to compress it all the way down to 90 seconds. So from that, I got a lot better at just making sure that I could say what I wanted to say in fewer words. Like in this interview, for example, while I may have been rambling at some points, I used to ramble really, really, really bad at long points of time. If prior to this speech, if I had not written the speech, probably be 9:30 by now, another 40 minutes by now, I'd probably be taking twice as long as answering these questions. But now through rewriting and writing all those speech drafts, And then also using that same kind of method to writing my posts, it's allowed me to get a strong message across while not, writing like a small book.
And don't worry, because we call it a long form interview on purpose, and we want people to go into detail and be thorough on that, because that's giving a lot of content for the reader. So this is all we're asking for. You're giving us everything we want with your detail. So don't apologize for that one bit. I did want to just my last question about your candidacy was moving ahead, and obviously we don't know if the conversion of Catalyst is going to have to be a future regular occurrence. Even if it does have to go in that direction, it's not going to be the first time anymore, and there's going to be a precedent that people can look back on and be ready for. But if someone is a new member who joined this year of their chapter and is really involved and is thinking about undertaking the project that you have of running for international office, and it's something that's resonating with them, what message would you share with them?
Well, I would first say, make sure you're running not just to run. Then, hopefully it would say, okay, I'm not running just to run. But in terms of advice, I would
I think your audio and video are being interrupted a little bit right now. I'm gonna hit the pause button for a second here.
Okay, so the first question I suppose I would ask is like, okay, so like, why are you running? Like, I hope you're not just running just to run. And then I would also tell them to focus on what they'll gain and what they'll do while they're running, instead of focusing on what they may do if they become elected. Because I wasn't elected, however, all the experiences that I've had through running, particularly with a social media campaign, in a strange way, I almost prefer that the campaign was online, because through the self-reflection of my hardships and having to share it without being redundant, I had to really reflect on, why does PTK matter so much to me? Why does overcoming all these matter so much to me? And why do I want to share this with people? And also getting to know the other candidates over a month rather than over the course of a few days. That was all. I don't feel that I could have gotten to experience all those things had it be in person. While Catalyst may not be virtual this year, really focus on connecting with those around you who are also running. Then the self-growth you'll be doing by running for an office position, because although it may not be an actual political office position, you'll be kind of surprised, like, hey, it's kind of like political office. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's a lot of moving parts that I learned that are like a part of PTK that I never learned before. It's like so complex and more than just, hey, I'm just going to run and I'm going to post some things on social media and I'm going to share my story. It's very actually complicated. And I would say, make sure you get a good campaign manager, make sure that they're kind of your opposite. I'm definitely more introverted. My campaign manager is very extroverted. But also make sure that you actually like your campaign manager, because there's been people in the past I've heard about, they're like, hey, this person's like a really good campaign manager, I'm going to make sure to like use them as my campaign manager, but they didn't really get along. I actually had the benefit of being friends with my campaign manager prior to this, and then also we had this opposite personality type, so it worked out perfectly. And then also we had opposite skills. I'm terrible at social media, graphic design, things like that, but that's where he's best. And although I can get my authenticity across people if I kind of like warm up first, he's like just immediately like, hi, my name's Gabe. How are you doing? Those are nice shoes you got. What's going on? And yeah, he's very extroverted, very nice guy. But yeah, I'd say campaign manager, focus on what's going to happen for sure, not what may happen. And whatever happens, don't think of it as a win or lose situation, because while you may win or lose in terms of getting elected or not elected, you're going to get something that you're going to be able to take with for the rest of your lives regardless. That's going to be taking this huge undertaking of running for international office. And it's very it's something that you're probably only going to do once in your life. And although you can run more than once, I think they only changed that rule last year to where you can run more than once, but it's really like a once in a lifetime experience. And just to really take it in at all moments, don't be focused on winning, because something that another candidate said, I think she said it best, it was actually Chelsea Davis, who was also running for president in one of the first Zoom meetings I had with her and a few of the other candidates. She said, if someone else were to be elected for president, I wouldn't feel like I lost to them. And I feel like that's kind of the case that all of the candidates this year realize. I'm not sure if all of the candidates in prior years get to realize that, because I don't know how close they get to become to everyone else. I know that the actual officers get to become really close because they work together for a year, but I'm not sure how close the candidates can become a catalyst in just the course of a few days. So just have the mindset of, these people, they're not your opponents. They're not your enemies. You're not trying to beat them. They all have their own genuine, authentic goals. They're not just trying to, stab you in the back. And, they're probably not doing things behind closed doors and shaking people's hands like politicians are. But I don't want to get this political or anything, so I'll refrain from saying too much more on that. But really just take it in as a good experience and not as an end-all be-all.
And by the way, Katie, before you delve into the next one, I just wanted to also, since I tried to look at everybody's campaign materials over that weekend, which I've never actually done before, I do really want to compliment you on your pamphlet, particularly because your pamphlet was great. Probably was my favorite in terms of all the candidates having the availability and ease and simplicity and precision of the information you had in there. I think your pamphlet did the best service to the candidate of anyone who was in there. And so I wanted to make sure I complimented you on that on the record, because it was great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, Katie.
Really, I think, we've taken, this talk kind of in a different direction, in terms of, well, I guess the basic questions that we normally ask every candidate. But I do think that, with that, you've kind of given us an insight, a little bit more into kind of like the struggles and the successes, of not just switching over to, from a in-person to an online platform, but also just getting to know what's kind of that research process, what's the thing that you have to do to get yourself in that position, to be a candidate, in that position, to have information to share with other people, and how, I'm not saying that it's hard, but I'm also not saying that it's easy. There's still a process that you go through, with anything. And really, it's not to discourage anybody, not to run for international office next year. And it's not, it's really just kind of like a learning tool, what you've given us, for other members that are maybe interested in just running for their region, for a regional officer. These are all really good, kind of insights into what it takes to do it and how to do it.
Okay. Can you repeat the question? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking in terms.
It really wasn't a question. I guess it was more like a compliment in terms of
Okay.
you're fine, of how, we've kind of taken the talk in a different direction in terms of, kind of listening to you and hearing those, the way you've adapted to running for an office.
Okay, I see. Okay, mm-hmm. I misunderstood.
Thank you. It's all right. Yeah.
So just to sort of cap it off, as you're coming toward the end of your experience with Phi Theta Kappa as the active member part, and now as you're going to soon become an alum, as you look back at your educational career at your community college, and this is the one question that I always want to try to ask everybody when we sit down and have these conversations, is if you were 5 years from now, 10 years from now, done with your education, pursuing your career, and looking back at your time at your community college, if there were one characteristic, one character trait, one character attribute that you would want the people who you've left behind at that community college to have the ability to say that you demonstrated in your interaction with them, what would that characteristic be?
I would have to say authenticity, because I think authenticity, although it is a single character trait itself, I feel that it also amplifies other character traits. And I don't believe that I would have gotten the immediate support I got from my chapter members when I did announce my candidacy for office if I wasn't authentic when I was working with them on Vice President of the College Project and when I did first become a member. I feel that that's the similar case for everybody. You know, you're not going to just win the support of others if you're not authentic, because people can tell if you're authentic or not. And, you know, if you're being inauthentic and, you know, people support you, eventually people are going to find out if you're authentic or not. And I feel that when people are authentic, they really get to connect with others better, and they really get to, and it also inspires others to be more authentic themselves, because I know that we all kind of, or personally at least, I used to really be much more reserved than I currently am. I didn't want to put forth all of my ideas because I really just didn't feel that they were worth hearing. And, you know, they weren't, I would just kind of agree with what everyone else was saying. But when I really put forth my best foot forward and be authentic with my ideas, and not saying like, hey, this is the best idea, but just like, hey, you know, I think this is what will be best from my point of view, I feel that other people resonate with that. Like, hey, you know, I get that, but, you know, this is what I think. This is why I think that, you know, when people are authentic with that, they can respect that, rather than people kind of be like, oh, well, you just kind of agreeing and being yes man, like, oh, well, you know, I think that's a good idea. And then kind of being almost resentful down the line, when like, oh man, you know, I wish I would have put my ideas forward, because, you know, maybe this project would have been different, or maybe I could have been more involved, or X, Y, and Z. So I really feel authenticity, because it just improves, I think, aspects in your life and then the lives of those around you when you put your ideas forth.
And if you were to summarize the experience as a whole at Arapahoe, we kind of talked about this earlier, but if you were to summarize it in one word or one phrase in terms of what the experience is like for the student, what would you choose?
All people are more than extraordinary, but they don't realize it yet.
Because it's always interesting when you have the opportunity to get a chance to really get into the differences that exist from every institution to the next, and yet everybody's got their own brand and their own approach to the service of the student. And so that's what's always interesting, is to get people's perspective as to what they value the most out of the institution. And so it's been, these conversations particularly have been pretty enlightening to me, just in terms of all the different ways these colleges, and we've had people talk about positions that have existed that I've never heard of, in terms of, and roles for former students, alumni, that I've never heard of in supporting their former institution. And it's a great way to keep people involved. I think the sort of the last PTK centered subject matter that I wanted to touch on, because it's important, and it's something that I used to talk about a lot when I was a member, and I talk about this a lot in a professional setting. And the phrase that I always repeat to myself over and over again when I speak at inductions, etc., is every institution wants its best people representing it. Is that the student has, once they're in Phi Theta Kappa, when they're taking the lead for the community college, they are the person who's responsible in many ways, literally using that word in its literal term, responsible for being the face of their community college out there in the public to a potentially unfamiliar audience. When you're undertaking volunteer projects, when you're undertaking college projects, if you're out there in public, you are the association the public will make with the college. And that's obviously a major responsibility. But if you think about what that can mean for the college, you know, something that I used to do with volunteer projects that I would participate in, you know, we always said the people that you're working with, in many cases, the people that you're helping, they, you know, oftentimes they're well past the college portion of their careers, but they're going to have relatives, neighbors, people they work with, who are either going to be choosing their educational options, or going to have relatives that will be choosing their educational options. And this person's going to say, if you're thinking about this community college, I know some students who went to that college, and they're very helpful, and they do a lot out here in public. I have a very favorable impression of that college. So you might be, and you always have to think of it this way, you have the ability to affect not only people's perception and choice of their collegiate education for that community college, but to favorably present the community college as a whole to the public. And once you think of it in terms of that, it becomes a major source of ownership, it becomes a major source of pride. So if you think about it that way, I don't know if you had thoughts on what is that sense, what is that responsibility, but that opportunity like in terms of really having a chance to be the face of your college out in public, not just amongst other colleges through the setting of Phi Theta Kappa, but through the college projects and the volunteer projects that you have a chance to be involved with?
Well, I would like more opportunities to represent ACC, because there aren't a whole lot of times to where I am aware of how, maybe not to the extent to where you gave the example of, but I know that as a member of PTK and also as a very involved member of PTK, I am sort of representative of what ACC is like. I know that what I do say in the public sphere matters. However, unfortunately, I haven't really had too many opportunities to really, I feel at least, really have that much influence on others to try and get them to maybe drop the stigma that still surrounds community college a little bit. Because one of my biggest goals with my campaign was to further elevate the reputation of community colleges and to try and totally eliminate any community college stigma that still remains. So while I am aware of how it is this strange kind of power that I do have, it is something that I feel that I wish could be better utilized, but I'm not exactly sure how it can be. Because although we do volunteering events with the surrounding community, and then we also do with the last college project, we did go to a lot of the surrounding like department stores, and we did a lot of advertising, trying to get clothing donations, and really speaking about like what PTK is and what ACC is all about, particularly as well. I don't feel that we got to reach that big of an audience as that I would have liked to have reached. So in the future, in this upcoming semester, I really do want to focus on being able to better communicate to students, and then also maybe even the local community about like what PTK is to the students, so that they can have a better idea of what it is, and so they can strive to be a member, then also to try and get a better opinion. Oh, was I cutting out?
No, you're good. You're good. I think that was Katie's audio that went through.
Okay. Okay. And I lost my thread.
You were talking about increasing opportunities in the coming year at your college for those types of opportunities like we discussed.
Yeah, so I would really want to better communicate with the community around me about how great of a college ACC is, but also within the college itself, I want to communicate the free resources that ACC provides, but also a more accurate description of what PTK is, because at the tabling events that we do for PTK, one of the biggest questions I get asked, like, hey, I got, I've heard this PTK, it's a fraternity or sorority, is that right? Like, that's right. We got a fraternity here at the community college, the only one in the state. But so I really want to have like a clear picture, like this isn't a fraternity or a sorority. This is an honor society, to where it's a lot of very interesting, unique opportunities, and you'll get to meet like-minded people.
Yeah, people will ask that question always, and no matter how big the imprint and the footprint is of the college, you'll still get that question from somebody. Sometimes I think people know better, and they ask that question anyway, just because they want to see how you react. But I just wanted to say that as you aspire to increase that presence like you've discussed, don't ever undervalue the small stuff, what we're going to, for the sake of this conversation, call the small stuff. Because I came from a very, very, very tiny regional campus, and we did a couple volunteer projects a year that were out in the community with a local health clinic and stuff. And even in those cases, what we didn't suspect it would have a major impact at the time, but people ended up choosing our college just based on 1 or 2 projects that we did out there a year. Now, obviously, it's a very small town that we were in, but still, it does make, every little thing counts. Every little thing makes a difference, and the big things are always comprised of smaller little things that build up to the big stuff. And so always don't ever get discouraged, and always think about it from that perspective, that even if throughout the course of your career, you've impacted the decision of one person, you've impacted the thinking and judgment of one person, that's all the meaning in the world to that person whose life is different now. And so, that's the beauty of what the involvement that I've seen is. And so I would say then, to just sort of pivot this into the very end before I want to ask you one question off record, I would say, moving forward, you discussed a little bit what your immediate future intentions are and such, but as I said, you're still early in your collegiate career so far as I'm concerned, having a master's degree and several bachelor's degrees. So I'm an old man when it comes to this. So you're very early on, so you don't have to have an answer for this. But in terms of, what are your general ideas for what you would like to do for a career, harnessing what you've done? What are your professional goals and aspirations, if you've narrowed that down yet?
So my goals right now, so I actually am planning to transfer to Stanford in the fall of next year. And I want to get my doctorate in psychology and be a clinical psychologist. But before I become a clinical psychologist, if I do continue down that route, I want to participate in a postdoctoral program so that I can do research at the highest level. So I can, although I don't want to do research psychology as a career, I would like to participate in research psychology and then help further understand the human mind. Then go into clinical psychology and do therapeutic work with clients. And then after doing that for a number of years, become a professor of psychology. And while I've had that idea pretty solid since I started ACC now. However, I am still open to other psychology careers. However, so far that's still remained appealing to me.
So I do want to, since you mentioned that you're definitely going to be pursuing post-bachelor's degree education heavily. So I do have a question for you about that I would want to ask off air, just because I don't want to put you on the spot, but there is a commercial of sorts that I do have to pitch to you.
Okay.
And it mostly focuses on opportunities for alumni, which is what we're after and what we're always trying to promote. Is we're trying to promote the active alumni who supports Phi Theta Kappa individually. And the number one way that people do that is through achieving in their careers and making the name of Phi Theta Kappa more prominent, but then also by working together with other alumni to hand down the opportunities that they received through, in the case of people in their professional worlds, done with college, the regional alumni associations, but also the university-based alumni chapters, of which we are one. And that's something that I wanted to run by you when we go off in a second. Before we finish the rolling part here, I just wanted to see, did you have any questions for us or any other feedback for us?
Is that a monkey in your background?
That is Ichabod. No, it's actually a cartoon human being. Ichabod Washburn was owned a barbed wire factory in Amherst, Massachusetts in the mid-19th century. And our university is named after him because the Lincoln College was the original name of this institution, and it was about to go bankrupt. And Washburn at the time was striving to be one of the few fully integrated higher educational institutions in the United States at the time. This is in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War. And Ichabod Washburn pledged $100,000 in 1865 money to this university and basically rescued it. And it would have failed if it hadn't been for his donation. And so it's an interesting story. The university changed their name. He actually died right after that. And then they only got about 25,000 of the 100,000 that he had pledged from his estate, but that was more than enough that they needed, and they pretty much took off. And so since then, they've sort of created a caricature of what the university's name, what the university's mascot is, because students at Washburn became known as sons and daughters of Ichabod, and then they just became known as Ichabods. And so the tuxedo, top hat wearing character is not what Ichabod Washburn actually looked like, but it was a student who was a cartoonist who sort of created a caricature based on a more late 19th, early 20th century typical scholarly, like college professor type personality that fit what the university wanted to project in terms of its branding. And it's a very interesting story, and it's definitely unique. It's something that's old hat to me, and I've never actually had the opportunity to explain it to someone who wasn't familiar, but we sell these little plush toy characters all over the place, and they actually are bigger now. This goes back to when I was a student at Highland. So he's always on my bookshelf, and I decided to put him over my shoulder for making these. And you were actually the first person to react to it, other than Katty, who's normally been, and she got mad at me the other day when I forgot to put him up there, but because I was in a hurry. But yeah, that's our story. There's a guy named Phil Watson who actually made an entire music video summarizing what I just told you. And I'll see if I can find that and send it to you. Katty, that might be a little bit before your time, but if you ever watched the Washburn Vespers concert with Charlie and stuff, Phil Watson he was a character for sure. He loved Washburn more than I do, and he was dedicated to the history of the university. And he literally wrote a song and made a music video explaining the whole story in rhyme, everything. Now he's actually in your neck of the woods. I understand is that he's in Denver working as a rapper. But that's only so he can start playing the cello professionally, because he was a ridiculously accomplished celloist, and he does vocal stuff on the side. If he sees that and that's not true, then I'm going to get angry messages through Washburn all over the place. But that's my understanding. I've never met the guy, but that's my understanding. So yeah, and we value the experience because this institution, we believe, is the best in the state in terms of how they respect the two-year college. And that's kind of how we got our alumni chapter started, was that we feel that we're indebted to the university for the reward that they offer to membership in Phi Theta Kappa. And so that's why when we got the star rating that we got, when we got our charter a couple of years ago, and then Phi Theta Kappa gave us a star rating as alumni chapter, it meant so much. There's only 4 university-based alumni chapters that got a star rating at all over the past year, and Athens State was one, at LSU, Mississippi, and we were up there with those institutions. It was pretty remarkable. We would have been 5-star if we had been able to go to Catalyst last year. We couldn't afford it because it was in Orlando, so it was quite a big deal. So there's a couple things that I do want to share off the record with you in terms of something that I want to just try to pitch to you as a commercial. And then I have Leanna at 10:30, so I do have to go fast. I asked a couple of ramble questions on purpose, just sort of as an intro. So your answers were not rambling. My questions in many ways were rambling. We want you to go into detail on the answers. All right. So
and on that note, I had to go off camera to go grab my Ichabod. I have like the most, I guess, modern version of it.
Yeah,
this is what he looks like now.
Yeah, this is the cartoon character of the top hat with the glasses and stuff. I think people have sometimes asked why they don't have a women's version. I think the point is that, as I said, the original intent was the sons and daughters of Ichabod, so that this is everyone's educational foster father, as it were. This character. So it's really special. It's certainly unique about anything we have in the state. And the top hat, it kind of has taken its own likeness as the logo as well, as part of our branding. So at homecoming, we have a top hat decorating contest. Believe it or not. So and other than that, I think a lot of these kids don't know what a top hat is. So Brandon, I really want to thank you for sharing your time and being so straightforward and being so thoughtful in terms of the information, the answers you've provided for us with this. It means a lot for you to share your time and share your experiences with us in interviews like this. I also want to compliment you on, aside from what I already said, for running your campaign in a very professional and thoughtful manner. And you did do a great job as from an observer. It's one of the reasons why I was really happy to get a chance to talk with you, because I knew that you would be a great source for this just based on the campaign that you ran. So I really want to thank you for sharing your time with us. we will have another one of these coming up shortly, so stay tuned for that. And we'll go off air now just to give Brandon a couple of commercials that you've seen us give to the other members starting right now. Stay tuned.